Hey there, so glad you're here. This is Reddit Stories Podcast. Relax, you're safe here. Here's our first story. Entitled Mom Lets Her Kids Run Wild, Then Loses It When I Don't Let Them Touch My Food. I'm 23, male. I live in the Netherlands, and I'm what most people would probably call a punk. I've got visible tattoos, piercings, dress kind of loud. Nothing wild by our standards, but enough to turn a few heads, especially from kids who haven't seen much outside their own little world. My fiance and I are both in our early 20s and we don't have kids. We're not anti-kids or anything. We just prefer a quieter life. That said, we understand kids will be kids. Crying, asking questions, laughing too loud sometimes. That's fine. What gets under my skin is when parents treat public places like a daycare and just tune out while their kids cause chaos. We had one of those nights. It was supposed to be a simple McDonald's dinner. Just a quiet corner booth with some friends, burgers, and a chance to wind down after work. The moment we sat down, we knew it wasn't going to be peaceful. 3 kids, maybe around ages 5 to 7, were running wild in the dining area. Not just walking around or talking loud. I mean full sprinting between tables, yelling over each other, throwing toys across the floor, even climbing onto the back of chairs like they were in a jungle gym. One of them was swinging around a toy car like it was a weapon. I watched it nearly hit someone's tray as they passed by. At the next table sat 3 women who seemed to be the kids' moms. One of them stood out, not because she said anything at first, but because of how checked out she looked. Arms folded, back against the booth, occasionally glancing at the chaos, but never actually doing anything about it. The other 2 were busy with their phones, barely looking up as the kids weaved between tables. No one called the kids over. No one said a word to them. Meanwhile, their kids were turning the restaurant into a playpen. Now, we weren't trying to cause trouble. We didn't even say anything at first. I just turned a spare chair sideways to create a little barrier, hoping the kids would stop running straight up to our table. It didn't work. They saw it as a new challenge and started climbing over it like I had set up a new toy for them. So I pushed another chair in, then another, quietly. I didn't make a scene. I just wanted to protect our food and our space. But apparently, that was enough to trigger the ringleader mom. She stood up, grabbed her bag, and marched over with her kid trailing behind. She looked at our table, then me, then back to her kid, and asked in a tone that was already halfway yelling, "Is there a problem?" I stayed calm. I told her, "Yeah, your kids keep running up here while we're trying to eat. I just put a few chairs to block their path." She didn't like that answer. According to her, I was looking at them funny, being unfriendly, and ruining their evening. I told her I wasn't trying to scare anyone, just wanted to finish my meal without someone jumping on the back of my seat. That's when she raised her voice, said something like, "This isn't a 5-star restaurant," and "What do you expect? This is just a McDonald's." I told her, "Exactly. It's not a playground either." Then, out of nowhere, she switched gears and snapped, "This is the Netherlands. We speak Dutch here." Now, for the record, I was speaking English with my fiance the whole time, because that's what we usually do. But I'm Dutch, born and raised. So I answered her in perfect Dutch and asked her if she needed help understanding what I said earlier. She froze for half a second, probably didn't expect that, then switched back to English and said I look like I'm on something. She was clearly flustered at this point, not making much sense. I stayed seated the entire time, didn't raise my voice, didn't curse. I just stared back, then gave her a short, "I'm not on anything. I just want to finish my meal." That's when she lost it completely. She yelled something I won't repeat, made a rude gesture, and stomped back to her table, dragging the kids with her. We were still halfway through our food, but the vibe was ruined. We finished quickly and decided to leave. On the way out, I made a joke to my fiance about needing something stronger than ice cream to deal with people like that. She laughed and we moved on. Later that night, I told some friends about it and I got mixed reactions. A few thought I should have just ignored her completely. Others said I handled it better than they would have. Honestly, I didn't yell. I didn't insult her or her kids. I didn't raise my voice. I just did what the staff probably wished they could do. Set a boundary. It's wild how often bad parenting gets excused until someone finally sets a boundary. Then suddenly you're the problem. I've seen this exact thing happen in restaurants, parks, even grocery stores. The moment someone politely asks for basic respect, it's like you've declared war on their entire family. Glad you held your ground. Most people would have just stayed quiet and stewed in silence. I get that the kids were being loud and annoying, but honestly, she was kind of right. It's McDonald's. You're gonna get families, noise, and chaos. It kind of comes with the territory. I'm not saying the parents were right to ignore them, but setting up a barrier with chairs just feels like overkill. Sometimes it's better to just eat, tune it out, and let it go. Not every battle is worth fighting.
Nothing wrong with letting little angels express themselves. It's called gentle parenting.
Pretty sure gentle parenting doesn't mean turning McDonald's into a jungle gym.
Maybe OP's vibe just scared them.
His vibe was trying to eat in peace without stepping on Hot Wheels. I exposed my ex-mother-in-law to her church after she sent people to harass my daughters. When my ex-husband passed away last year, I thought the storm would finally die down. We'd been separated and were in the middle of a divorce when it happened. He had cheated on me, and 2 children had come out of the affair. The other woman, his affair partner, also passed in the same accident. It was a mess, legally, emotionally, socially, all of it. But the part I hadn't expected was how hard his parents, my ex-in-laws, would try to wedge themselves into our lives after that. And I mean aggressively. They started pushing for custody of our 2 daughters, who are now 17 and 15. Not visitation, custody. They were also trying to move in with us, saying it would be easier to rebuild as a family if we were all under one roof. That idea was never going to fly, and the custody situation is now in court. My daughters aren't close to their father's side of the family, especially after finding out about the affair and the 2 little boys born from it. They were actually the ones who discovered his infidelity. They had seen the messages, the photos, the signs. They were deeply hurt by it, and they've been working through that trauma with a therapist ever since. So no, they don't want anything to do with their half-siblings. It's not about jealousy or spite. It's pain. Last week was my youngest daughter's birthday. We weren't having her party until later in the month, so I gave her a little spending budget and took her to the weekend farmer's market to pick out whatever she wanted. It's one of our favorite places. Fresh eggs, produce, snacks from local vendors. She mostly grabbed sweets and chocolates, just having a good time. After a while, I noticed she had been gone a bit longer than expected, so I called her. Right before I hit dial, she called me instead. Her voice was shaky. She was crying. She told me that a group of older women had cornered her near one of the produce stalls. I grabbed my eldest daughter and ran in the direction she gave me. When we got there, I saw 6 women, clearly from my ex-in-law's church, surrounding my daughter. They were berating her, calling her cold-hearted and unchristian for not wanting a relationship with her grandparents, and even accusing her of turning her back on her baby brothers. These women were strangers to my kids, and here they were, publicly shaming a 15-year-old girl over her father's affair and the aftermath of his death. It was disgusting. I stepped in, got between them and my daughter, and told my eldest to go pay for the items and get her sister to the car. The women recognized me right away. Some of them used to smile at me during services when I still attended that church with my ex. Now they looked at me like I was the devil. One of them told me I was refusing to submit to my ex-in-laws and that I was setting a bad example for my daughters. Another said I was abandoning the elderly and should be ashamed for not supporting them. When I reminded them that these same grandparents were trying to take my daughters away from me through the courts, their response was to double down. One actually told me,
"A good Christian woman wouldn't fight so hard to be independent."
Things got loud. Someone complained to market security, and we were all asked to leave. Back at the car, my daughters were shaken. We went, I would be too, after dealing with those harpies. Back at the car, my daughters were shaken. We went home, and I made sure they were okay and settled for the night. But once the house was quiet, I sat down and pulled up Facebook. I had already heard from a friend that my ex-mother-in-law had been posting dramatic messages in the church's group community page. But what I read that night took it to another level. She had written this long, emotional post claiming that my daughters and I had left her and her husband completely alone and destitute. She said we had turned the whole family against them, refused to care for her, and even abandoned 2 orphan children. She even implied I rejected the babies because they were boys. And people believed it. Some church members were falling over themselves with sympathy, writing messages of support, calling us cold and selfish. Others, mostly the louder, more judgmental types, were piling on with comments about modern women and broken families. But here's the thing. This church may be judgmental about a lot of things, but they're extremely firm about infidelity. It's one of their big lines in the sand. So I had an idea. Since the divorce wasn't finalized when my ex died, I still had access to all the documentation. Screenshots, emails, texts, everything from the moment I found out about the affair to the fights that followed. I had messages from my ex admitting what he had done. I had texts from his parents when they acknowledged it and still blamed me. I had messages of them bullying my daughters about accepting their little brothers, and even one where they accused my girls of causing their father's death by exposing the affair. That message came just 2 days after his funeral. I spent the next day collecting everything. I printed them at a local shop, paid extra to make sure the copies were clean and legible, then I put them into little booklets that looked just like the hymn packets they handed out at the church. The first picture when opening the binder is my ex and his side woman making out in our living room. Their faces are easy to discern, and the girl looks nothing like me, different skin tones and hair color. Underneath, I wrote, ex-husband's name and affair girl's name, love story. Early the next morning, I took them to the church before service. There's a desk in the back with the songbooks for people that need them and forget their own, and they never check them. By the end of that Sunday, the quiet whispers had become a roar. I didn't post anything publicly. I didn't show up or say a word, but word got around. People started asking questions. The Facebook post was taken down. Comments started disappearing, but not before the truth had spread. People realized that the whole story they'd been told was fake, that the poor, grieving grandparents were trying to control a family that didn't belong to them anymore. Some members wrote apology letters to my daughters. Someone even mailed an invitation for me to come back to the church for support. As for my ex-in-laws, they quietly stopped showing up. I heard through the grapevine that they had left the congregation after feeling alienated. My ex-mother-in-law posted on her own page that she felt abandoned and wished her son was still alive because he would have taken care of her. She made no mention of the kids, the lies, or the harassment, just grief and guilt-tripping. And maybe that's how it ends for her. As for us, we're moving forward. My daughters are healing, I'm protecting them fiercely, and I have no regrets about exposing the truth, even if it wasn't the most traditional route. It's honestly disturbing how some churches encourage this kind of behavior, sending people, even kids sometimes, to confront others under the banner of faith. It's not about kindness or community anymore. It's about control and public performance. And when people push back, it just reinforces the church's narrative that the outside world is hostile and they're the only ones who truly get it. It becomes a cycle, one that harms everyone involved, especially the people they target. Some people really do use religion as a way to feel morally superior, especially when it comes to judging others for things that don't affect them at all. You'll see them scolding kids in public or trying to correct strangers under the guise of saving souls, when really it's just a power play. It's frustrating because faith isn't the problem. It's how some people twist it to excuse their own behavior. Thankfully, not everyone is like that, but the ones who are tend to be the loudest.
Sounds like Grandma thought that guilt and public pressure would fix what her son broke.
Instead, she ended up getting exposed in front of the same people she tried to weaponize.
She tried to rewrite the story, but someone brought the original manuscript.
With footnotes, chapter titles, and a cover photo nobody can unsee.
Never let toxic people who try to use religion put you down. They don't know what love is, and if they did, they wouldn't act the way they do.
And most of the time, the only reason they were ever in your life is to help you remember that you never needed them or their approval in the first place. Being in your life is a privilege, so don't keep people in your life who can't see you for who you truly are. They just want to pull you down to their level. That's the only thing that makes them feel powerful, pulling others down. But you're not here to fix them or convince them. You're here to transcend them.
Facts, Reddit boy. Those with true love in their hearts, you'll recognize them by the perfect happiness they show when they're around you. And what is perfect happiness?
Perfect happiness is enthusiasm minus expectation. At that point, you don't need to convince anybody of anything. You also don't need to play any old roles just to keep others happy, because they were never the source of your happiness. Something greater is, and that something is love, the love that you were never separate from. Entitled neighbors think they own street parking. Now they're mad I won't move my car. My boyfriend and I rent the basement suite of a house in a quiet dead-end street. Our landlord lives upstairs, and overall, the area is peaceful. No traffic, no noise, just a few older neighbors who mostly keep to themselves, except for the folks directly across the street. Their setup is kind of wild. Their driveway is massive, at least twice the length of a normal one, maybe more. It leads to a big open space beside the house with a carport that could easily fit 3 cars. If they wanted to, they could probably park 4 or 5 cars on their property without much effort. But despite all that space, they act like they own the entire street. This all started a couple of weeks ago. I parked my car across the street from their driveway, but not in front of it, just near the edge across the road, well within legal boundaries. I had done it plenty of times before. Our landlord actually told us to park there because his security camera has a full view of that spot. It makes sense for safety and visibility, and there are no street signs or markings that say otherwise. Anyway, one afternoon I got out of my car and their adult daughter, let's call her Karen, walked up to me. She started off polite enough, asking if I could park a little further forward because they were having a hard time backing out of their driveway. I told her I'd check with my landlord to see how far the camera coverage reaches. She kind of nodded, but also said she hoped I'd just move it anyway because her parents had been mentioning it a lot. Her tone was polite on the surface, but it had that subtle, "I expect you to comply" vibe. I told her I'd look into it, and she walked away. Our landlord was out of town at the time, so I decided to do a bit of digging. I looked up our city's parking bylaws just to make sure we were in the clear. According to the rules, as long as you're not within 5 feet of a driveway entrance, you're good. I wasn't even close to 5 feet. I was parked across the street, a good 40 to 50 feet away from their driveway. So the problem wasn't access. The real issue was that they didn't want to do a proper 3-point turn. They just wanted to back out in a straight line, coast into the road, and drive off without adjusting. For context, this street isn't busy. It's a cul-de-sac. Most times, the only cars on it are mine and my boyfriend's. It's not like I'm creating a traffic jam or blocking delivery vans. There's room. Now, here's another wrinkle. They have a dog that just roams around freely. It's chased my boyfriend and me a couple of times, literally crossed the street to bark and lunge. No leash, no fence, no apology. And it often just lays in the middle of the road like it pays taxes. Flash forward a few days. I pulled into my usual parking spot after running errands. Karen and her boyfriend, let's call him Ken, were out walking the dog. They watched me make a U-turn and park like I usually do. As I got out of the car, Ken started walking toward me. I was already tired of the whole situation, so I casually pointed toward my boyfriend, who had just arrived behind me, and let him handle it. Ken asked the same thing Karen had before. Could we please park somewhere else so it's easier for them to back out? My boyfriend explained again that our landlord asked us to park there for security reasons, and we were following his instructions. He also brought up the dog. He said, "Honestly, it's a safety thing. Your dog's chased us before." Ken didn't acknowledge that at all. He just said, "Are you scared the dog's going to scratch your car?" Like it was some kind of a joke. My boyfriend stayed calm and said, "No, it's just a safety concern in general." Then Ken said something weird. "You don't know how close I've come to scratching your car while pulling out." That's pretty much confirmed for us that this wasn't about inconvenience. It was a warning disguised as a neighborly complaint. Like if we didn't move our car, accidents might happen. We told them again that we had already spoken to our landlord and would let him handle it. Karen, meanwhile, was standing a few feet away, glaring like she had just been personally insulted. Her dog kept barking, and she held its mouth closed like that would somehow help. As we started walking toward our car, she called out, "You don't know how hard it is to pull out. We're asking for everyone's sake, including your cars." Then she turned and stomped back up their driveway. And I do mean stomped. Their driveway is so long, she probably cooled off halfway up. We let our landlord know they had approached us again. He had just gotten back from his trip, and to our surprise, he was pretty upset about it. He said he'd go speak to them directly. Now I'm just watching the situation unfold from a distance, and I've got to admit, I'm feeling a little petty. I've double-checked the parking laws, and I'm not breaking any rules. I've parked legally, safely, and where my landlord prefers, so I'm going to keep parking there. If it really bothers them that much, maybe they should try using their driveway like everyone else does instead of treating the entire street like their private garage. Anyway, thanks for reading. Update. When Ken and my boyfriend ended their conversation earlier, Ken actually agreed to wait until my landlord got back so they could talk things out. This was before we knew he was already back. But spoiler alert, Ken called bylaw on us anyway. So my boyfriend and I went over to talk to them. Only Ken came out, and he was rude the entire time. He insisted that the 5-foot rule also applied to the opposite side of their driveway. Funny enough, while they were talking, their dog came running out and barking at my landlord and boyfriend. The conversation didn't go anywhere and left everyone a bit fired up. My landlord told us to just move our car for the night, and he had talked to the bylaw in the morning to clarify. But when my boyfriend went back out to move the car, the bylaw was already there. My boyfriend asked if we were allowed to park where we usually do, and the officer said, word for word, yes, it's street parking. They're wrong. Bylaw is now talking to Ken and Karen, telling them the exact same thing. What a great night. If their driveway is that long and they still can't back out without nearly hitting something, maybe their problem isn't where you park. It's who's behind the wheel. Parking in full view of the camera is the smart move, especially if they're already dropping not-so-subtle warnings about your car. You're well within your rights, and having video proof could save you a major headache if anything ever does happen. Honestly, if your 2 small cars are such a threat to their 40-foot escape route, that says more about them than it does about you. You might want to double-check that your landlord's cameras record continuously, not just on motion. Those gaps can miss a lot, especially if something happens quickly. If possible, setting up your own dish cam or backup camera could give you extra protection just in case. Some neighbors act like public streets are part of their deed. You're parked legally, not blocking anything, and you've got every right to stay put. If they keep pushing, it's smart to have that footage ready, just in case they try something you can't predict.
They're making it hard to pull out. This is for everyone's safety.
Meanwhile, your dog's in the middle of the road ready to chase people, and your boyfriend just confessed to almost keying their car on accident. Sure, Karen, totally about safety.
I know, I'm just kidding. But on a serious note, why is there always that one neighbor who lets their dog roam the neighborhood? And he's always the dog that chases people and bites them.
Meanwhile, the people who actually have nice, kind dogs, they're the people who do everything they can to ensure their dog stays safe in their yard.
It's like there's considerate people and inconsiderate people. I'm wondering if considerate people are the only ones that are actually real, and all the inconsiderate ones are just shadows here to teach us lessons about life.
And once we learn those lessons, those shadows will fade for good? And at that point, everyone that comes into our life will be just like we are?
Now you're getting it, Reddit boy. Somebody's waking up now.
That's all for now, but don't be blue. We'll be back soon with more stories for you. Remember to listen to Mr. Redder every night, so your dreams will be wonderful, like you are, and bright. Now click this playlist, come follow along. We'll be right here. Until then, so long.